Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. And thanks once again for making Justice #1 in total viewers Saturday night. Well, you just saw it happen live. President Trump welcoming American Joshua Holt back to the White House 2 years after he was taken hostage and imprisoned in Venezuela. We'll be talking about this more tonight and throughout the hour. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, Senator Lindsey Graham, Congressman Lee Zeldin, and Ann Coulter are all with us tonight. But first, my opening statement. This Memorial Day weekend, as we honor more than 1 million servicemen and women who sacrificed their lives to defend our nation and our freedoms, we come face to face with hard evidence that the deep state planned to take down our duly elected president. A deep state from President Obama on down that did everything in its power to destroy Donald Trump. The latest? A spy placed in the Trump campaign. Sound loony? Well, last year we thought you'd have to be wearing a tinfoil hat to believe President Trump when he said that he'd been wiretapped. And now we know secret surveillance was conducted on at least 7 Trump associates. An unmasking of Americans done at a 350% increase in the presidential election year by Obama deep staters. And now we find out a spy was placed by the FBI in the Trump campaign. You can be sure that there's more as the DOJ and FBI fight the release of information sought by Congress. So, will they ever admit there was a spy?
As best I can tell, it's made up. I don't know where he's getting that from, honestly.
Do you find that to be at all possible or probable? I'm going to just play devil's advocate, that there was a spy inserted into his campaign by an intelligence agency?
I don't find it possible, and I know it not to be true.
I think it's very typical of Mr. Trump to mischaracterize. He's a master of mischaracterization and dishonesty. To label someone as a spy when they're a confidential human source, I think, is doing a disservice to these individuals, but also to the FBI.
But like most liars, they can't keep their stories straight. Clapper, on the other hand, pretty much admits there was a spy, and he thinks Trump should be grateful.
Was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand, were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
So why doesn't he like that? He should be happy though.
Well, he should be.
If ever you weren't sure who to believe, I'm going to make this real easy for you. The Obama administration was so determined to get Hillary Clinton elected and Donald Trump defeated that they let Hillary skate on her criminal activity and created a narrative of criminal activity on the part of Donald Trump. They created a false predicate, a made-up dossier, paid for by Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the FBI in order to get a court to approve spying on Trump's campaign. And they were allowed to spy on the campaign for a year. They kept it close. Only the highest level of the FBI, not the field offices. The highest levels worked together to take Trump down. They planned insurance in the event their girl Hillary didn't win. They leaked information harmful to Donald Trump to the press. And it was ahead of the FBI at the behest of James Clapper, who privately told the president about the fake dossier so that they could leak it to the press and the world. So who are you going to believe? Take a look at this chart. They're all liars. James Comey, the head of the FBI, lied about whether he had ever been an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump or Clinton investigations. He replied, never. But Mr. Leaker himself had to admit that he did so. Comey also lied before Congress when he testified that he briefed the president about the dossier because he learned the media was about to report on it. In truth, Comey briefed Trump for the very purpose of getting that dossier out to the public. And Comey said his investigation of Hillary was thorough. In truth, he wrote an exoneration memo long before essential witnesses were even interviewed. And of course, his deputy director, Andrew McCabe, that I didn't even put on my chart, lied so many times the guy had to be fired. And to get someone to fire in that agency is amazing. And Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who pushed to call the Clinton investigation a matter, lied when she said there were no emails between her department and the FBI when she used an email with a fake name to write about her infamous tarmac meeting with former President Clinton. James Clapper, another hoot, the director of the National Intelligence Agency, pretty much lies whenever he opens his mouth, like when he lied before Congress in answer to a quite direct question about whether or not his agency collected data on hundreds of millions of Americans. He said no, not wittingly. He also lied about the Trump dossier, saying he never leaked it to CNN. He since admitted that he did, and now he's on CNN's payroll. John Brennan, head of the CIA, lied and said the Steele dossier was not part of the intelligence community's evidence on Russian interference in the 2016 election. And again, liars not being able to keep their stories straight. He was contradicted by Clapper. Now, you remember Susan Rice. Her lying started long before Benghazi and that despicable video. She also lied and said that in the final days of the Obama administration, she knew nothing about the surveillance of President-elect Trump and people around him. And she knew nothing about identities being unmasked. Shortly thereafter, she came clean, telling House investigators she unmasked senior Trump officials. And the big kahuna at the top, just before the inauguration, President Obama created new rules that allowed intelligence historically protected within one agency to be spread across at least 16 agencies, signaling to his people, let it all hang out and leak your heart away on Trump. So I, for one, am sick and tired of these liars, leakers, and liberals attacking our president and our democracy when they are the ones who tried to frame him. Here's a primer for all of you. If you're going to set up a president to try to frame him, do it against someone who's dumber than you are. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now with a reaction to my opening statement and all of the developing news tonight, Congressman Lee Zeldin, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. All right, Congressman, welcome. It's good to have you here in studio. Let me ask you, we just heard a few minutes ago the president regarding the hostage from Venezuela who had been there for 2 years, released, and there it is right on the screen. And it was just a few weeks ago that 3 hostages were brought back from North Korea. Why is the president so successful at this?
It's a lot of winning. I'm not tired yet. Those 3 Korean Americans who returned home, the look on their face coming off the plane, this family, I know this whole state of Utah is celebrating, a whole country is celebrating because of the success of President Trump, the State Department. Senator Corker went down there, met with President Maduro, came home. I know Congresswoman Mia Love. These members of Congress were personally, any opportunity they could to speak to the president, to Secretary Pompeo, to colleagues, other ambassadors to other countries. They did whatever they can to make sure that he was coming home and his wife.
That's amazing. It really is. And, you know, when you think about the young man who was in North Korea, tell me his name. He came back from UVA, Otto Warmbier, okay? He was there while President Obama was in office. He's returned to us when President Trump is in office, and he dies within a few days. I mean, it's such a dichotomy between the two administrations. But let me talk about your resolution that you had signed by approximately 25 in Congress, looking for a second special counsel. Why a second special counsel, and will this make a difference?
As you highlighted in your opening, there was so much misconduct at the highest levels of the DOJ and FBI. When you look at FISA abuse, how and why the Hillary Clinton email probe ended, how and why the Trump-Russia probe began. 25 members of Congress signed on to this 12-page House Resolution 907 this week. There are other members of Congress, including people who are in leadership, committee chairs, who have also come out in favor of a second special counsel. We need transparency. We need accountability. We also need to do so, as you pointed out, this wasn't rank and file in field offices.
Oh, yeah.
The ranks of the DOJ and FBI are filled with people who love our country. They take the oath seriously.
And I don't say that enough either. I mean, I worked with them for 30 years. They're fabulous. But will this make a difference, Congressman? We all know we need a second special counsel.
What's so great is that a year ago, many of the facts that they're in this 12-page resolution were not known by Congress. They were not known by the American public and the media. But these are facts. Now, this resolution's been out there for a few days. What's amazing is that no one in this country has been able to poke a hole in a single word of this resolution. It's all factual.
Well, and when you say a single word, I mean, you make allegations like it was further not disclosed to the FISA court that the wife of fourth-ranking DOJ official Bruce Orr worked for Fusion GPS and that Christopher Steele directly transmitted the dossier and other information through Bruce Orr for submission to the FISA court. I mean, you know, we could go on for hours about how corrupt this was, but who ultimately appoints this second special counsel?
The power is in the Justice Department, and you can't expect the DOJ and FBI to
Let me
investigate
tell you something.
themselves.
That wackadoo Jeff Sessions, I'm sorry, he recused himself. He's not doing it. Rod Rosenstein isn't going to do it.
You have an inspector general who's been doing actually a pretty good job getting some of these facts out, but he can't. You're right. And Congress can't prosecute either.
Right.
So this information, in order to hold these people accountable to DOJ and FBI, there's going to be a need to appoint a second special counsel. We have a special counsel right now investigating the president
for nothing. For nothing. Okay, but I want to back up. I want to get to what I'm saying. I applaud you for this, but this doesn't make a difference in terms of getting someone from the Department of Justice to a point. Now, let me ask you this. If the president were to declassify information that would make it unequivocal what happened in this last campaign, that they literally tried to take down a candidate and infiltrated a political opposing party in a presidential year. If he could do that, then there'd have to be a second counsel.
The president should. The Wall Street Journal editorialized it. With America's leading pro-national security law enforcement publication, they came out in favor of the president declassifying. What's amazing is that while congressional Democrats and many in the media have not wanted the public to get any of this information, it's very telling that congressional Republicans and others in the media and others throughout the country, they want more information out.
Yeah.
So if the president declassifies the FISA application, you can, if there's anything as far as sources and methods that you need to redact, that's fine.
Yeah,
but we want the American public to get as much information as possible to form their own independent judgment.
Okay. All right. Congressman Zeldin, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Great to be with you again.
All right. And next, inside the administration's talks with North Korea, could the summit still happen? White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders joins me next. Breaking tonight, the Associated Press reporting that according to South Korea's president, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has committed to the summit with President Trump, and he's committed to denuclearization. That's big news if it's true. President Trump said tonight he's still aiming for the June 12th sit-down with Kim. It may still happen. But earlier, I spoke with White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders about North Korea and the latest on what the president refers to as Spygate. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us. You know, so much has happened this week, and we're kind of in the middle of this free-floating situation with North Korea. And I know the president, he said he was pulling out of the summit but left the door open. North Korea seems to have trying to crawl back in, but things are changing every minute. What insight can you give us?
Look, this is an evolving situation. The president was extremely clear when he wrote in his letter to Leader Kim earlier this week and laid out exactly the things he would want to see. And one of the key things is that the dialogue that matters most is at the very highest level. And when they want to get serious about having this meeting and having these conversations, that dialogue will need to be between those two individuals, and that's where the decisions will be made. We're continuing to prepare, as the president has said within the last few hours. Certainly, we'll see what happens. We think that this would be a good thing for the world for this meeting to take place, and a good thing, frankly, for North Korea. That's the president's focus, is getting denuclearization on the peninsula. That's been what he's wanted to do from the onset, and still hopeful that, you know, whether it's June 12th or July 12th, we still hope that that can take place at some point soon.
Well, let's move on to what happened this week with the Gang of Eight and with the discussion regarding what the president has called Spygate. Now, Adam Schiff comes out from this meeting that was supposed to involve just classified information. He said nothing has changed. There is evidence of wrongdoing here, but not of any spy being placed in the Trump campaign. Aside from the semantics of spy and in the campaign, does the president still believe that there was a placement of someone from the FBI prior to the time that the FBI claimed that they started looking at the Trump campaign?
Look, there's a lot of information out there that certainly suggests that a lot of nefarious things went on between the Department of Justice and the Trump campaign. If anybody was doing anything wrong, it certainly wasn't taking place at the Trump campaign, but it looks like now it may have been through our own government. Certainly something that should cause concern for everyone, and it certainly has got the president looking and wanting to get some real answers, as members of Congress have demanded to get answers, and we think they should get them. That's been the president's role in this process, is pushing to make sure that we have complete and total transparency. That was the role that the White House staff played in the meeting that took place on Thursday, and that continues to be the president's message. Let's get to the bottom of this and show and see what took place. One thing we know for sure, because we were part of it, we were involved in it, and that's that there was no collusion. And I think that's pretty clear, not just to us, but to the American people. This charade has gone on for over a year, and they found absolutely nothing. It's time for this to wrap up, and let's move on and look at some of the real issues and real problems that our country is facing.
You say it's time for it to wrap up, and I think that most Americans would agree with you, but what, if anything, is the president going to do to push that wrap up along?
Look, we've done everything we can do. We've been fully cooperative throughout this process. We've turned over millions of pages of documents. And once again, despite that, the hours and hours that have been given in interviews and the amount of paperwork that's been turned over, they've found nothing. And it's time for us to close this up and move forward.
You know what's interesting? If indeed that spy or a human source that may have been in the campaign, I think most people believe was at least one, if not more, if there were any evidence that they found, that evidence would indeed be a part of the application for the FISA warrant. But can we assume, or should Americans assume, that that spy found nothing because there wasn't anything else added to the application for the warrant before the FISA court?
That certainly seems like it would be exactly right. I think that if this happened, which a lot of reporting indicates it did, it would be one of the most outrageous and egregious things that anyone could ever do to another and competing campaign, and completely out of line, out of step, and something that every American should be demanding justice on.
And you know what? Most Americans are demanding justice, but they're not seeing it. In fact, we have an absentee attorney general by the name of Jeff Sessions, who's pretty much recused himself and put Rod Rosenstein, a person that the president, has not appointed to be attorney general, the same person who said that Comey should be fired, in a position of putting a man in an investigation to investigate whether Comey should have been fired. Isn't the president fed up with both of these people? Isn't it time to get a working attorney general on staff?
Look, I think the president is fed up with the fact that this investigation is still taking place. Like I said, this has gone on for more than a year. It's a total hoax, and it's one of the biggest wastes of taxpayer dollars and time to continue pushing forward in this process. We certainly are focused on the things Americans actually care about, and we're getting a lot of those done every single day, and the president continues to be focused on making sure we're actually producing and doing the right thing for the American people.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Judge.
Thank you. And again, the AP is reporting that according to South Korea's president, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has committed to denuclearization in a meeting with President Trump. Senator Lindsey Graham and Ann Coulter are still ahead, but next, the panel weighs in on the big news out of the Korean Peninsula. Sarah Carter and Mustafa Tamiz on deck, ready to square off as justice rolls on. Breaking tonight, the Associated Press is reporting South Korea's president says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has committed to denuclearization and to that on-again, off-again summit with President Trump. Welcome back to Justice, live on a busy night of news, Memorial Day weekend. A lot to cover with my panel, so let's get right to it. Joining me tonight, investigative journalist, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, along with Democrat strategist Mustafa Tamiz. All right, guys, this whole idea of a spy being placed on the Trump campaign by the FBI. If you heard my open at all, it sounded like Clapper, although Brennan denied it and Comey denied it, Clapper basically said, yeah, it was probably a good idea, and they should be happy. But what I want to know is, and I'm going to ask someone to put up I want you to listen to this sound. Take a listen.
We need to know, why did it begin and who authorized it? What role did Barack Obama have? Did he know that the FBI was going to put informants there? And I'll guarantee you the answer is yes. No FBI would put informants in another presidential campaign without permission from the White House, including the president.
All right. So what do you think of that, Mustafa?
Well, Judge, the same OIG that did the report that led to Andrew McCabe leaving the FBI is investigating this, and that report will come out. And when it does, I'm sure you'll have confidence in it, and we'll see where we go from there. But I think that you and your viewers have a very important role to play in history. We're about to talk about North Korea in a minute from now, and President Trump needs to prepare for that summit. And President Trump doesn't listen to his critics like me, but he does listen to you, and he doesn't listen to your viewers. And I think you have to encourage him to prepare for this summit.
What makes you think he's not preparing?
This is like anything else.
What makes you think he's not preparing?
I hope he is. My challenge is that I see him tweeting quite often, and he seems to be distracted about all of these other type of inquiries.
He can do tailspins around all of you. All right, the guy doesn't sleep. He works 24 hours a day.
I hope that he does, because what he's facing is important to
but the
not
proof
just,
isn't
not just
pudding.
us,
He's
but our
already
children,
got
our
3
grandchildren.
hostages
This is a
back,
nuclear war that we're dealing with.
And he's already gotten Kim Jong-un agreeing to denuclearization. Sarah.
Judge, we're evading the question that you just asked. Actually, Mustafa is. Let's look at the timeline of events here. This is so important, because if all of this is true, if there was an informant, and it appears to be that there was, if there was an informant reporting back to the FBI and to U.S. intelligence about members of the Trump campaign, and if the timeline is off, which I believe it is, that means they weaponized both the FBI and the U.S. intelligence community to investigate a candidate for presidency, then a president-elect, and then a president of the United States. And this is very, very important, because it violates all the basis, the Constitution, the foundation of our nation. This stuff only happens in countries like Pakistan and places around the world where their intelligence community and their law enforcement actually has more power than the people in office, than their elected officials.
All right. Mustafa, you can't deny that there was a FISA warrant sought, that a fake dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the FBI was used to get an application, and there obviously was nothing gleaned by the spy because it wasn't included in the FISA warrant. I mean, do you see what we're saying?
Well, Judge, the people that... Judge, the people that we're talking about were actually talking to Russians, and they have actually pled guilty.
Why didn't they meet him on the street corner before they went into the Trump campaign?
Judge, look. Either we can talk about alternative facts, or we can talk about facts. The facts are that 18 people have been indicted, Russians. 6 people have actually pled guilty. The Mueller investigation is moving on.
That has nothing to do with Russia, Mustafa.
I'm asking
you. The majority of which has nothing to do with Russia.
I'm asking you for a very simple thing. I think the President Trump is distracted by these things.
Oh, you know what?
And you know that he's distracted by it, because he's actually seeing a lot of these tweets. But we have to focus on what's really important.
To tell the president what's important. I need you to answer my questions. And here's my question.
I'm happy to answer your question if you would listen to my answer.
I'm not going to listen if you're not answering my question. My question is, number one,
let's stay on topic.
Was there a spy? And number two, was there a FISA warrant that was based on real evidence?
All the evidence shows that the FISA warrant was based on real evidence.
Yeah, fake dossier.
George Papadopoulos talked to George Papadopoulos. George Papadopoulos was talking to Russians. That is told by Australian intelligence. Number of other people were talking to.
Didn't he give the Clintons campaign $25
They were
million?
talking to Russian intelligence, and the FISA warrants are for people that are talking to foreign intelligence.
Mustafa, these people were all connected to. By the way, the people that were involved with George Papadopoulos and Carter Page were all connected to the UK intelligence agencies and the US intelligence agencies. There is no proof whatsoever. In fact, they brought those Russians to them. There is no proof whatsoever that anyone in the Trump campaign ever colluded or did anything with the Russians. This is a made-up disinformation campaign.
How come everybody in the Trump campaign was talking to Russians?
Mustafa, let me say something really quick. You've been talking for a while. Let me say something very quickly. If the Obama administration was so concerned about the Russians, why didn't they give the Trump campaign a defensive briefing in March when Carter Page joined, when Trump announced in the Washington Post that Carter Page was part of the campaign? Why didn't they give a defensive briefing to them? That is part of their job. That is part of their duty. They didn't do that, Mustafa, because they were the timeline is not matched. They were setting them up.
Time's up. Mustafa got 10 seconds.
They did give them a notice to say, you are probably being infiltrated.
Really?
Do something about it. But instead, the Trump administration continued to talk. They continued to talk to Russians.
Where'd you get that from?
They did not.
Literally, it seems like dozens of people in the Trump administration, for one reason or another, have some reason to meet with Russians.
I'm not
We've
into
never seen this
facts.
before.
Sarah Carter, Mustafa Tamiz, thank you so much. And Senator Lindsey Graham says he knows how the stalemate with North Korea will end. I speak with him next, one-on-one.